everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is Healthy Living with Laura, and I'm Laura Vandenboer. Today we're here at Hear Well, Be Well in Elora, and I'm here with John and Kathleen Teed. So welcome. Thanks for being our guests today.
Thank you.
Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you guys do here?
All right. Well, Hear Well, Be Well is a hearing clinic, and what we do is test hearing and fit and dispense hearing aids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how, if somebody is going to book in, what would they, like, what are some issues that they might be having? Why would they think to call in, and why would they think to come and see you guys?
All right. Well, that's a good question. Hearing loss kind of sneaks up on you.
Okay.
And so many who have a hearing loss don't really recognize it until someone points it out. And so we tend to send out questionnaires to help people discover whether they have a problem. So it's a quiz. So if you have, ringing or buzzing in your ears, for example, it may be hearing loss related. It might be that you hear people, but they sound like they mumble. You ask people to repeat questions or statements. You might be turning the television a little bit louder, and family members might notice.
Okay.
So it is, how do I identify it? Well, if you're having any of those issues and someone's pointing them out to you, then you should get your hearing tested.
Okay. And so how did you guys get into this business? I know you guys have multiple locations. When did it start? How did you get it into hearing aids?
So I've been doing this for 35 years. And what I found a long time ago, my nature is to help people.
Okay.
I had this opportunity 35 years ago to witness someone being fit with hearing aids for the first time. And I saw the great impact that it had on the family members and on the individual who was being fit. And in that moment, I just knew that this was something that I was going to do for the rest of my life. Okay. It was that aha moment. And I just said, this is so important. And I want to be part of that. I really want to help people change their life and, get connected again to their family and their friends.
Right. Well, and I think that's a good way of putting it, is that people really do feel like I've got family members that have lost their hearing, and they really do feel kind of isolated in a group setting. And so kind of bringing them back to that, I think that's a good way of very important.
Very important.
Yeah. So you guys are very involved in some local charity and like kind of wider spread. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So we feel there's an obligation that we have to give back, and there's lots of ways that we can give back, but we've chosen to be in smaller based communities. And so even though we have multiple locations, we look at each location as if it were our only one.
Okay.
And so we look to find how is it that we can help our community and help our constituents, because our constituents are typically an older person in their 50s or 60s. So we're often looking at things that relate to them. So healthcare. So for example, here in our Elora office, we wrote a check for $3,100, I believe, to the Memorial Groves Hospital because they were doing an expansion.
Okay.
And so we found a way to get out information about hearing health because so many people are so misinformed about their hearing, the hearing health. So we related it to education and them coming in and getting a hearing test. And through that, we were able to raise $3,100. So we do that in as many different communities or offices as we can.
Okay.
And so in terms of the international work that we do, John and I had started a charity called Project Empower, and this was in Rwanda helping orphaned genocide survivors continue to live in a completely different world without their family. And this was a decade after the genocide, and we heard about these kids who were still not independent, not doing well. And so we set up a charity to help these kids. So we would go down to Rwanda and set up projects for them and education for them. So in that work, we got to learn about the healthcare system, and we got to see the hearing loss that is so pervasive there because they didn't have the healthcare. So we thought, well, let's bridge the two. So we already knew the infrastructure there, and in Health Canada, we are limited by who we can give used hearing aids to, i.e. no one. And those are the restrictions of Health Canada because this is a prescribed act to dispense hearing aids. So we take hearing aids that can't be sold in Canada but are in perfectly good working order, and we take them down to Rwanda and teach the doctors and nurses there to treat hearing loss, and we take down the programs and the hearing aids and the batteries, and then we show them, and by we I mean John, and then they continue on with helping people with hearing loss. And then every couple of years we get a call, we're out of hearing aids. So we go down again and then train some new people in the hospitals, meet with our kids in Project Empower. Yeah, so it's always the right thing to do to give back, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's great, and I'm glad that it's on a local, but then also on the wider scale as well. So, just a question: what kind of credentials do you have? What kind of training do you have that you get into something like this? What's your background that way?
Well, I am a hearing instrument specialist. Okay. I know there are also audiologists in this field. That is the route that I chose, to be a hearing instrument specialist. And, well, the rest is, what comes natural. I mean, helping someone and building a business around that, right? And it just grows. And, then we, of course, here's Kathleen. She's a brilliant-minded woman and very determined to be successful, and so am I. And so we've grown many clinics. And we continue to do great work.
Right. I think you said you have 13 locations, right? Okay, so and we're here in Elora. What are a few other maybe closer ones to us here?
Orangeville, Bolton, New Hamburg. We're as far north as Huntsville, as far south as London, as far east as Exeter, and as far, east as Bolton, and as far west as Exeter. And then every kind of nook and cranny in between. But it is a professional designation. You go to college or university in order to become a hearing instrument practitioner or an audiologist. So. Right. So you are post-secondarily schooled for years, and then you have to get a certain number of hours in order to be credited. So we have to hire those people who have those credentials. But when we go to hire people, it's beyond the credentials that we look at, because the work that we do is important. Right. And so we look to hire people who have open hearts, who care about this, who are passionate, because we can train every other technical part of it, but not a way of being, not a way of caring. Right. So that's why so many of our practitioners, are unique to themselves, but heart-led just like John is.
Oh, that's so great to hear. So if somebody is to book in, what does their visit look like? Do we want to get into a demonstration here, and then we can kind of chat our way through that?
Of course.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Okay, sounds good.
We're going to go into the test room and show you some of our equipment and how we use it. And we also have with us today Roz, who is a client of ours. She's been coming to see us for a number of years. And she came in with exactly the same reasons that everyone does. Is it me or is it everybody else?
Okay.
Because they all sound like they mumble. But
What's wrong with kids these days?
That's right. What's wrong with kids these days? So, of course, Roz went through this great discovery and a process that we'll show you in just a few moments.
Okay, so we're here in your test room, and we have Roz here, and you're going to show us a little bit about what you actually do during your testing situation, and we're going to hear from Roz as well. First things, how long have you been a client here for?
All in October, 5 years.
Okay, so you go way back then, and you've had quite a long-term experience. Obviously, a pleasant experience if you keep coming back.
Absolutely a pleasant experience. In the past, I had recognized, or I should say my children had recognized, that I had definite hearing loss and pleaded with me to please start doing something. Of course, in denial, like many, many people are. And I finally knew that I was pretending, and I was being called on it constantly. So in the past, I had gone for help. And the very first time, I was told that they could do nothing for me. I would just keep losing my hearing. And I was determined that that was really wrong information. And that was many, many years ago. And so I, again, just ignored it and went on because I thought if I don't think about it, nothing will happen. I was wrong. Anyway, then I did try a couple more times, more recently before I came in to see John. And it was the same thing. It was a very, that one size fits all?
Yes.
Of course, that has never worked. And that's what the feeling I had was that, no, I am not getting the information I need. I do not understand what is being told to me. And once again, I just went into my little cocoon and said, okay, I've lived with this all along.
Right.
I can do this. And I can't explain the actual physiology of it, but then someone told me that, hey, if you don't do something about this, there's a part of your brain that stops operating, that receives the messages, and that did it. So I got an ad in my mailbox one day, a very colorful little pamphlet, and it was Hear Well, Be Well. And I guess my intuitive side said, I just really feel that I need to go there. And from the very moment that I stepped through this door, everyone, from the meeting me at the desk to, coming back in here and having all the tests done, I felt I was at home, and I felt I was really important, and that something would be done, that I would walk out of here finally after many, many years with an answer. And I'm saying that from the depth of my heart. I'm not, I would support Hear Well, Be Well to the end of the earth because of it. It was an amazing experience. And not only that day, but they have followed me now for 5 years. Okay. So that if there are any changes, they make the adaptation through all this great computer setup that they have here, and I go out of here top notch.
Good.
And indeed, my children cannot talk behind my back anymore. So it's, it really does have its advantages. And even this year, I have recognized the benefit for me. But it was the spring, and my house is out at the end of Fergus, and there's a lot of marshland around me. And so it was spring, and the frogs were out there croaking at night, and the crickets were going, and I was so enjoying the sounds, and I had my windows open. I took out my hearing aids to go to sleep, and again, it just hit me that, oh my gosh, the sound is gone. That beautiful sound of spring that I love so much, it was gone. So people just don't realize what they're missing.
Right.
It's phenomenal. It's not like my great aunt who would come to visit with this big clunker hanging out of her ear that would buzz all over the house. And as children, you looked at that and that was imprinted in your mind. I can remember thinking, I will never be deaf, because they talked about deaf, my deaf aunt. And she would take it out because she couldn't stand the ringing. And so a lot of us grew up with that implanted into our, long-term memory. That's what it means, If you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. But unfortunately, when we can't hear, we don't go and get it looked after immediately. But,
Well, and I'm sure your story's not the only one out there. I'm sure there's tons of people that have a very similar story.
Absolutely.
So, well, why don't we talk to John a little bit here about how he helped you get to that point? Because I think it'll be nice to see what you do behind the scenes and how we get you to this positive experience here.
Okay.
Okay.
So, first, of course, it's very important to me to know who I'm working with. So, with everyone, I take the time to get to know them, understand their problem, their situation, and then try to help them understand that we're working on this together, that we are really, I'm going to help Roz understand what the problem means, where it's located in the hearing system, and what the solutions are. And once we have solutions that we can talk about, we go in to find, what's the right adaptative process, what type of hearing aid technology do we need. And before we get to that, there are 14 unique steps to really gather the information in the entire test process. So one of the first things that we do is we look into the ear, and this is an interactive office. All of our offices are very interactive because we have a very large screen right here, and of course you can see beautiful pictures. But we use a video otoscope so that when we look into the ear canal, we also we want Roz to see her eardrum. We want her to see the health of it. We want her to see the test results as they're coming up, and explain to her not only what does the hearing system look like in terms of its sensitivity, but also how well is she understanding speech. When there's nerve damage, sometimes it will also lead to some permanent distortion. That's why we have a permanent hearing loss. Nerve damage can cause a permanent hearing loss, and by that we mean that you might be able to hear things loud enough, but clarity is lacking. And with hearing aids, what we try to do is get to the highest level of clarity as possible. And sometimes that's only 90% compared to normal. And that's because we have nerve damage. So we look at that, we assess it, we set realistic expectations as to how you're going to adapt to hearing aids, what you're going to hear, what you're going to miss. But that is a full process. So we can use our camera. I'm just going to show you exactly how we look into ears. So this is our camera right here, and if we look at the screen, we're going to look right at Roz's ear, and we're going to go right inside the canal, and there we see a beautiful eardrum. You can see the light reflecting off of it. You can actually see the middle ear, the bone that's attached to the eardrum. It's just sitting right there on the other side. And that is what a healthy outer ear looks like. So from this stage, we would snap a picture, and you can see multiple images on the screen. Let me just put this back here. From this stage, we would talk about next steps. If there were any issues, we would bring them up. But if it's free and clear, then of course the next part would be to measure the middle ear function, because the middle ear is our natural amplifier. It takes the sounds that hit the eardrum, and from the time it hits, goes through the middle ear, which are the three smallest bones in your body. It actually stimulates the cochlea, the inner ear. So there's fluid in there, so you need more motion. And therefore, the bones are an amplifier, so it increases the sound pressure by about 28 times. And then from there, we have the nerves that are inside the inner ear, and we measure that using a tone test in the sound booth. So here's the sound booth that Roz would typically go in. so. We go in here. We would put headphones on, or we use insert headphones. She would go through a series of tone tests, and she would press a button every time she hears a tone. And we're trying to measure the faintest sound that she can possibly hear 2 out of 3 times.
Okay.
When we measure that, it's actually telling us when does the hearing system send the signal to the brain for the first time.
Okay.
That's why we're measuring the faintest sounds.
Okay.
Okay. When we have that, then we'll have it on we actually have a graph, and the graph tells us what category of hearing loss do you have. Is it mild, moderate, severe, or profound?
Okay.
And something in between those.
Right.
So, as you can see, we also have speakers in here, and we measure Roz's ability to understand speech without hearing aids in a
Okay.
perfectly quiet environment. We want to find out if she's what is she missing, and then we would do the hearing test. With that information, we program a pair of hearing aids.
Okay.
With those hearing aids, we put them back on Roz's ears, and we now go right into how much better does she hear and understand speech.
Okay. You retest.
We retest with the hearing
Okay.
aids on.
Okay.
And with that information, we bring Roz back out. She comes back out here. She's wearing her hearing aids that we've just programmed.
Right.
And now we can actually have a conversation. Now I know by whatever the information that I'm going to relay to her, she's going to understand me.
Okay.
Because I know she has a hearing
Yes.
problem. I know that she struggles with clarity and understanding.
Right.
So what I say to her without the hearing aids may be misconstrued. It might not be accurate, and
Right.
so I want to make sure the message is clear and easily understood. So we put hearing aids on her, and then we have a conversation about this is the hearing problem, this is where it lies,
Okay.
and here are the solutions.
Okay.
We can also demonstrate in this environment, and most people will say to me, but John, this is a quiet room. So how does that help me in a restaurant?
Right.
How does that help me at the family get-togethers? Because there's 18 of us. How does that help me when I go out with my friends and we're at the coffee shop and the place is crowded and there's lots of noise?
Right.
So right here in the office, what I do with Roz and with everyone else, with their hearing aids on that we've programmed for them, we will demonstrate what it sounds like in a restaurant, in a busy
Okay.
place.
Okay.
And we'll fill this space, this room up with a lot of background noise
Okay.
and have a conversation. And that really demonstrates how hearing aids work
Right.
in group and noise, and how much better clarity there is when you're wearing the hearing aids.
Right. Well, and I think that's where it becomes life-changing, right?
does.
Is that's when people aren't, they're kind of sitting with their family and they're not understanding what anybody's talking about because it's a loud group. So when you can kind of recreate that and then they're hearing clearly, I think that's when they really, it's life-changing for people.
Absolutely. And so it doesn't just end there. I mean, having the opportunity to help Roz and many others like her with a hearing loss isn't just, come on in, here's your hearing aids, and thank you very much.
Right.
It is a journey because, the protocols that we have here is to make sure that everything is working well and continues to work well year after year after year.
Right.
So in the very first year, we'll see, we've saw Roz at the 2-week mark, 30 days after dispensing,
Okay.
90 days after dispensing, 6 months after dispensing, and at the 1-year mark, we completely retest
Okay.
and reprogram the hearing aids back to any slight changes in her hearing system.
Okay.
So she's always going to get the best possible results
Great.
year after year.
Okay.
And we do that.
then after the 1 year, is it
Continuous.
So it's
It's continuous year after year after year. We continuously reprogram,
Okay.
and of course we give lifetime service. So if Roz says, "Hey, I don't have a scheduled appointment, but I think there's an issue. I don't know what it is. I can't solve it." She just picks up the phone or walks in, and we will take care of it. And there's no cost to doing that to her. So it's just a continuous service that leads to better hearing.
Good. Well, and I think just to kind of backtrack a step, I think you said, I heard that you guys do demos. Is that right? So
That's
you
right.
you might have a set of your hearing aids, make sure that they feel okay before.
Right. So the hearing aids that we use are ones that can typically help 80% of all the different types of hearing loss that we'll see in this office.
Okay.
And the other 20%, we need a different type of hearing aid.
Okay.
We also have those, but they're typically meant for people who have worn hearing aids for years, have a profound hearing loss, and already have an adaptive earpiece that we can use on that hearing aid because it's a very powerful hearing aid.
Okay.
But the ones that we use for demonstration purposes, we have here, and we can reprogram it over and over and over and continuously to use the technology in that hearing aid to demonstrate benefit.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Before we move away from the testing booth, is this, I think I heard that it's not something that everybody has that in your field. This is maybe
That's
a
right.
little bit
I
more
mean,
specific.
there are many clinics that don't have a booth, and, you know, technically, as long as you're in a quiet environment, you're going to get good results. And for me, I think that the highest level of care is important, and I want to be consistent. So year after year, test after test, that we're always going to be looking at exactly the same thing in the same environment. You know, if we had a quiet room, but someone's walking outside, or there's a conversation outside that door, that might interfere with the test results, but it'll never interfere when they're in this booth.
Okay. So this is your controlled environment.
This is my controlled
Okay.
environment.
So you're gonna walk us through some of the testing and kind of what your screen, some of the stuff, what it means.
Okay. So once the assessment is done from the booth and we come back out here, we have a graph that illustrates the degree of hearing loss, where Roz can just hear sounds. These represent the faintest sounds that Roz could hear in the booth. The red circles represents the right ear, and the blue represents the left. And this scale, or this graph, is called an audiogram. It's found in every hearing clinic, and 0 is the normal hearing line. Okay, so this is a scale of loudness in decibels, and these numbers at the top represent frequency. 250 to 8,000 hertz is the speech frequency band. So all hearing of speech sounds are in this area. Now, as our sensitivity drops from 0, as it goes further and further down, it becomes more and more difficult to perceive certain parts of speech. In the lower frequencies, so from 250 to 1,000 hertz, this is where we hear a lot of the vowel sounds, the A, E, I, O, U sounds. And we'll even set the room up so that we introduce a restaurant noise and have conversations in it.
Okay.
So that, you know, Roz needs to know, when I'm in a group, how is this working for me?
Right.
It's not just about quiet one-on-one conversation, because that's typically easy even without hearing aids, as long as you look at me, right, Roz?
Yes, because I became very, very good at reading lips.
Right.
But no, the sound, as long as it was coming at me, I was okay.
Right.
But I did recognize after the fact that I too was reading lips.
Okay, so we're here with Crystal, our office manager here in Elora, and why don't you introduce yourself and introduce Lisa
Thanks
beside
so
you.
much, Laura. Thank you. Hi, my name is Crystal. I am the office manager here at Hear Well, Be Well in Elora. This is Lisa, our hearing specialist. She's been helping folks in our community for over 5 years, hundreds of folks with their hearing loss and hearing awareness. So if you're ever struggling, please do feel like you can come in for a free hearing exam or a tinnitus consult. You can reach me at 519-846-0090. Our website, www.hearwellbewell.ca, or just drive on by and stop in to see me.
Well, thanks so much, guys. Thanks to John and Kathleen, Crystal and Lisa. It's great to see what you guys do here in Elora and how you're helping the community. And it's, I think it'll be really helpful for everyone to kind of know what you do and why they might need to come see you.
Absolutely.
So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. to see
Yes,
us.
thank you. If you are a healthcare professional in the area and you would like to be a guest on our show, please contact me, Laura, at alignedorthics@gmail.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.